everybody, it's Romania Black, and so we are watching Death Note, the musical. So I have had a lot of people request that I watch this as I've been reacting to Death Note, and so Bernard Black, that is a fellow YouTuber, sent me a thing on Twitter and was like, okay, there's lots of different versions, but apparently there's some funny moment in the original version that has Arai Kenji playing Light. And so that's the version I'm going to watch, which I'm going to watch the 2015 original Arai Kenji version. I've heard the other guy that plays Light is really good as well, but I kind of like the idea of watching the OG version, like the original one that came out, the first one. I'm sure that I'll probably later on watch like some other versions just to compare and contrast, but I do want to watch this first OG version of it and just see what it's about. Death Note as a musical, considering it's kind of like just a very straightforward story and it's very realistic, I could see how you could maybe make that into a musical. Although, and Light's kind of theatrical, so imagining Light as a theater kid, I can do that. So that's not a far stretch. So I think it could work. I'm pretty excited to watch this and see what goes down. But yeah, so it's a pretty long musical. It's like 2.5 hours. So I'm buckling in. I got my juice. I'm ready to go. But I do have some comments since I have finished this series. I do have some comments I want to go over that have been from the last few episodes that I want to talk about before we start. Before we do that, I was kind of talking about how I was thinking about watching back to episode 36 and Nier wearing the mask for L. There's a number of reasons that he did it, obviously to hide his face, but I thought about it and the fact that he could see Ryuk the entire time, I was like, I wonder if he also wore the mask because he's never seen Ryuk before. So the mask also hid his possible surprise. Like if he saw Ryuk and was like, oh, and it helped him not look surprised so that it wouldn't seem obvious that he knew the Shinigami was in the room the entire time. I thought that might have been a reason he wore the mask. That could have been a cool angle to it, even though it's never really confirmed, right? Alex Cornejo talks about like all the women associated with Light and Mikami commit suicide. Yeah, Misa, supposedly in the anime, we're led to believe Takeda, Naomi. Luckily, his mom and his sister do not. Seiyu and them do not, so that's good. But yeah, sucks to be ladies in the world of Death Note, that's for sure. And I feel when we do the manga reaction review, we'll talk a little bit more about that. I have the manga, actually, and I'll show you all when we do the manga review. I'm currently on volume 4. I've read the first 3 volumes. They're amazing. I'm working on taking notes so that I can talk about the reaction and the review when we get to it. But yeah, Death Note manga is going pretty good so far, so I'm pretty excited about that. Baydal Singh talks about the Death Notes. The Simpsons did a Death Note parody. Yes, and it is on my channel now. I'm recording this after watching the Death Note parody, although it's not premiered on YouTube yet. So I did react to the Simpsons Death Note parody because I thought it was really hilarious. So if you've not watched that, go check it out. You don't have to watch the Simpsons to know what's going on. It's absolutely hilarious. I hadn't watched the Simpsons in like a decade, and it was still just as hilarious as you would think it would be. Killer Queen talks about how, we talked about Light being a psychopath versus a sociopath, that Mikami checks off the boxes of a psychopath. Yep, that seems like it would be probably true, right? I thought that was a good comment to kind of like just touch base that when we first did that little checklist, we hadn't known Mikami long enough to kind of fulfill it, but no, it checks out now. It checks out. Hey Bale talks about the Death Note musical songs. Now, I've been told that they're English songs for the Death Note musical, and that there's an English soundtrack that's apparently really good. So I know that it's probably going to be the songs that are in this version, but apparently the English soundtrack is really, really good. So I am going to react to that soundtrack. It's just probably going to be next week. So it'll be next week's video, but I am going to react to the soundtrack because I've heard it's really good, and I'm really excited about it. Alexander Q talked about how technically Mikami chose Takeda to work with them, not Light. And I was like, that is a very good point to make. And that Takeda had convinced herself that, like Misa, she was the one chosen by Light to help him. So just great decisions all around, right? Great decisions all around. McRain, though, McRain had an amazing comment, and I wanted to bring it up in this video, that McRain talked about how Light, there's this idea of people and toys. Light used people as if they were toys. and Nier uses toys as if they are people to figure out and deduce things. I was like, that little contrast between the two of them is so good. I was like, I did the mind blow meme and was just like, oh, that was great, McRae. Thank you for bringing that up. That was amazing. And then Bernard Black, who, thank you again for giving me the links to this musical, talked about how Light says that Mikami and Takeda were too soon wanting to punish those who are lazy at the start of the series. Bernard was saying that basically, Light was getting on to Mikami and Takeda for kind of acting too soon and trying to like say that Kira was going to punish people that are lazy. But that also implies that Light was intending to do it at some point, and pointed out that at the beginning of the series, Light talked about how the world needed to be full of good, hardworking people. Meaning that good, hardworking people. And Bernard was talking about how that's kind of problematic. Like, what if you're disabled? What if you're handicapped? What if you don't want to? So it's just, that whole idea of Light's perfect world and just how kind of messed up that is. And that Light wasn't saying, oh, we shouldn't punish people just for being lazy. That's not a crime. But rather saying, it's too soon to start that. Yeah, we got to get everybody on Kira's side before we lay down some serious laws. Crazy stuff, right? Crazy stuff. So, yeah, I'm reading the manga. Going to be doing the character songs next week, and then I have ordered the Los Angeles Murders novel, and I'm really excited to be reading it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and then I'll be doing a review of it as well. So lots of Death Note this month, but you know what? I wasn't ready to end it after the anime. I was like, no, there's too much other good stuff. If y'all had to suffer through the Netflix adaptation with me, I might as well pay you back with some decent reactions. That movie was great. Great times. So I've got my paper ready to make some notes because this is going to be a long musical. I have a feeling you're going to want to take notes that we can talk about at the end of it. But y'all, I don't know what I'm signing up for, but Light is a theater kid. Let's do it. Let's just get into it. I'm pretty excited. I'm going into this blind, y'all. So we'll just see what happens, right? But we are going to start the Death Note musical, the OG version, y'all. And we're going to be doing that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. That was absolutely wonderful. And yeah, if there is one thing I regret about the whole thing, it's that I wish it had been a two-parter, because there are some plays in the US that have done a two-part thing. Like I think of City of Angels. I had a friend that went and saw it like a few years ago, pre-COVID and all that. And it was like a 6-hour event. Like you went in the morning and watched the first 3 hours. They saw it with Nathan Lane and Andrew Garfield, the main cast. It was like a 3-hour event where you watched the first 3 hours. Then you came back and then you had lunch and you came back and you watched the last 3 hours. So it was like a 6-hour play split in half. You had a lunch break in between. I almost wish they'd done that with this. I know it's probably not feasible, but with a story like Death Note, I feel like they could have done the first half, or at least they could have cut up to Elle dying. And then when Elle died, they could have had the second half be Mello and Nier and all of that. They could have done that. Because they bring in the Wharf, but man, and I get them cutting corners where they did, because some of the plot lines like would not be fit for a musical. Although I did kind of want to see Light and Misa and Elle dance around and talk about becoming friends when they're in like the Boy Scout phase. I was really hoping for that. I was hoping for handcuffs. Although if you can imagine trying to do stage direction while you're handcuffed together with a chain involved, that would have been a lot. There could have been a lot of room for error there. So I can see why they wanted to bypass that. But the ending is so rushed and it's so kind of weird that I'm like, I mean, Light ends up getting killed by Ryuk in the end and Elle dies, but the circumstances, it's like, why'd they have to go to the wharf? Were they just calling out the wharf for the sake of calling it out and being like, oh, you guys know the reference, right? But then like the whole thing, like Light gets shot, but then he's okay. It's just very interesting. It kind of falls apart right there at the end. And I was in love with it up until Light even telling Rim that she's going to have to sacrifice herself to write Elle's name. And up until we get to the wharf, I was like 1,000% sold on this. And then it loses itself right there at the end because they have to rush the ending. And I'm like, I would have made it a two-parter. But what can you do? So I did take some notes throughout. This was great. This was done so well. Like, the production is very low key, very minimal. It doesn't need to be crazy. I feel like the actors and the singing very much makes up for it. Because I've watched the Yona of the Dawn stage play at this point, and I've watched Bungo Stray Dogs. This was probably by far the most minimal of the three that I've watched so far. Like, Yona of the Dawn had a lot of props and a lot of set pieces. Bungo Stray Dogs had a lot of visual special effects to like portray different things, but this kept everything like as minimal as possible. Like, the classroom scene at the beginning is about as proppy as we get, and everything else is very minimalized, which they move around a lot and they have a lot of set pieces that need to go in and out, so makes sense, right? But man, y'all can sing. Everybody in this musical could sing. They got a voice. And I was like, I'm envious because I'm jealous because they all could sing so, so well, right? But I can't wait next week to listen to the song lyrics now for the soundtrack, because I was trying to write notes of my ideas based on the songs, but then when I was listening to them, I was like, this is amazing. Like, it is so cool to see the exposition of the show and the thematic elements put to song and put out there, and it's so beautiful. Like, nothing felt, there wasn't, here's the thing, I did notes throughout this, but like, nothing about this musical came off as cheesy. And that was my fear going in. Like, I've seen bits and pieces of like the Haikyuu stage plays. I've not seen a full one before, but I've seen bits and pieces. And I'll be honest, like, it looks like it's a very well produced show. The actors are all amazing, but there's just something about it comes across to me as not cringy, but awkward when they're playing volleyball and they just burst into song. It's almost too cheesy and it takes me out of the moment, and I'm like, and it doesn't quite feel right. I would rather have Haikyuu be a straightforward play and just be like a comedy and have sports moments. I'd rather have that than the musical aspect of it for Haikyuu. That's just my thoughts. But here, it's like the transition from dialogue to song was very natural. It flowed well. Light, being a theater kid, surprises no one, so it works. And it just, it never felt corny. It always felt like very sincere and very heartfelt. And like the character work and the songs, like the lyrical work, like none of the lyrics sounded cheesy. They were all like very impactful songs. I freaking loved them. The very first song where they're in the classroom explains Light's ideology. It's that whole first episode contained. I was like, this is great. And talking about like the rule of law and that laws can restrain you, but that justice is in place for society. And I love that conversation of law and justice being two sides of the same coin. I loved that conversation. And Light trying to find his own justice, right? And he used the example of war, but then it comes back to the fact that, and the funny thing is, it's almost ironic. Light's like, well, I'm just brandishing my own justice. But in the examples he gave, he talked about how war was so bad because it was just two sides brandishing their own justice. And what was the result? Mass murder. So it's like he's becoming his own thing he's preached against. So, but yeah, that first song was so good, and establishing like the actor that played Light, Urai Kenji, he did a really good job. I liked him. He definitely looked like Light. Bernard had said that the other guy that plays him, he liked better as Light, but I thought he did a fine job with him. It was really good. And I think I got the cross-eyed moment you were talking about. Wonderful. Rim and Ryuk being humanoid. Rim was beautiful, haunting, ethereal, like so creepy and cool and wonderful, and her voice actress was amazing. Her voice was beautiful. I was like, hell yeah. And Ryuk, like such a manic gremlin throughout all of this. He came across a little bit more sinister than anime Ryuk did, but so far that's been the tradition. Like, anime Ryuk's been the most carefree, kind of comical and cartoony so far. And then in real live action, he kind of translates a little bit more sinister. But I love their humanoid designs. I didn't know how I'd feel about them, but they worked out really well. And they had kind of just like an otherworldly, like spiritual, supernatural look to them without being like very cartoony or cheap, I guess is the word for it. Like they did such a good job. But yeah, the songs are so natural. They fit the story. They fit Light so well. I loved Rim and Ryuk, where Rim was tragedy and Ryuk was comedy. Like, I loved that. I could just picture the two masks next to them. I thought that was wonderful. Light calling himself a murderer, but then he keeps a notebook. Light and Misa's characters in this were really well done. Now, obviously, it was a very short musical in terms of comparing to the series, so we don't get to see Light's character work like we do in the anime. But Light, in that first opening bits, he shows a bit of like humanity and compassion, being like, oh, I don't know, and then he talks himself into it. Whereas in the anime, he comes across in the first episode like very, very smug and God complex, like right off the bat. And here we build up a little bit to it. Right? We build up a little bit to it. But yeah, the Death Note. I love that the idea that he has this devotion towards the Death Note. I was like, yeah, it becomes something he has devotion towards, like it's controlling him, right? And then, man, they don't beat around the bush. Like Soichiro in this version, he was not about L. He was calling his methods gray and tying back, because that's the thing. L definitely becomes a martyr in the anime. Like in the anime, once L dies, it's like he's a martyr. Like In and Mello are like gung-ho about avenging him and cracking the code he couldn't solve. Light's only regret seems to be that he killed L. You know, it's L kind of becomes a martyr, and it's sort of funny because it makes you forget L's more questionable methods, like with Misa back episodes prior, because, you know, it's a post-mortem thing. We're viewing L's life through rose-tinted glasses. It's interesting. But yeah, but Ryuk does not have his own note in this version, so that was good to know. And then I liked that they used the Misa Misa concert as a plot device, because it's a musical, so her singing makes sense. So let's have her connect to Kira and get a hold of him through a song. Let's have her have a concert and say you takes Light to it, and Light's a good big brother, so he takes her to it as well. Like, I liked that. I think that was a cool touch to like streamline everything, streamline meeting Misa, and cut out all the stuff that you don't necessarily need for a musical. And in this version, Light is much more nervous and more human in his interactions than he is in the anime, and he goes so far as to keep on emphasizing his mission, right? And how he has to, the only thing, I love this though, that when he talks about the mission, we cut to L, and he's like, the only thing that you've changed is your name. It's like, I love it. He's like, yeah, the only thing that's changed about you is your name. You've made it Kira. And I love L being like, Kira, or maybe it's Ryuk that sings it. But in any case, he's like talking about how Kira is, it's Ryuk's Song to Light. I'm like looking at my notes here. Ryuk's Song to Light was really good, where he's like talking about like the only thing that's changed is your name, and that saying that Kira is not a god, but a man-made fabrication. I was like, so good. So good. I can't wait to listen to the lyrics next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about that. And then we go to the concert. I love that Ryuk is kind of scared of the concert and all the lights and sounds, but then he's dancing at one point, and it's like the dance that he does in the second OP. It's great. But then Misa has the song to Kira that is really good. And I love that line at the end. He's like, I didn't really like the concert, but that song about Kira was great. And then, yeah, Seiyu's song to Light about like the ultimate sibling guilt trip song about like, hey Light, you're not a murderer, are you? And Light's like we're super uncomfortable about it. But then Seiyu telling him like, you need to stop. Like, if I was telling Kira what to do, I would say they need to stop. And does the ideal hero song and the funny thing is she's talking about her brother being an ideal hero because he's not like Kira. But then Light kind of twists the song to be like, well, I am the ideal hero for you because I am Kira. And it's like, and then it's like a cherry on top where you have Misa Misa coming in to do a duet with Seiyu about those two things. Like, you have two sides of the same coin, right? Light's the coin, and on one side you have him being Seiyu's brother and hero, and on the other side you have him being Kira and Misa's hero, and it's just chef's kiss. It's absolutely wonderful. And then I like that I think the turning point, this musical is a good reminder that for Light, the ultimate turning point for him is the moment that he kills Lindell Taylor. For me, that in the anime, that was me. And I know that was 2 episodes in. But for me, Light became a villain of the series. Technically, to me, he became a villain of the series the moment he killed Naomi. The moment she died and he made her commit suicide, I was like, Light, you are a villain. Game over. But I think that the turning point for Light is the moment he decides that he's not going to just punish criminals, but punish anyone that gets in his way. And that includes Lindell Taylor. Even though he ended up being a criminal anyway, it's the fact that he made that judgment not knowing that he just wanted to get rid of somebody that was in his way. I was like, okay. That for me was a turning point for me. But yeah, that song that he sings about Light and his cross filled with lies that he carries. Every actor in this musical, for the most part, I mean, Soichiro could have looked a little different, but for the most part, looked the part and could sing. I was like, I did not know I needed so many Light and L duets in my life until this moment. I didn't know I needed a Rim and Misa duet until this moment. But here we are. I felt like the chorus for this musical felt a lot like Sweeney Todd. Sweeney Todd is one of my favorite musicals, and one of my favorite parts about it is the chorus, because they're so dynamic and they're just, you have the Greek choir in plays that like give exposition and transition from scene to scene for the audience. And that's what this chorus does, and it's done really, really effectively. I like it. Elle can sing. I love Ryuk calling Soichiro cool. I felt like maybe that was a little bit of a nod to the anime because Ryuk ends up working with Soichiro and giving him the eyes. Maybe it was like a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge to him. Again, I wish this had been 2 plays. We could have seen more of them together. Would have been nice. But yeah, I love the idea that you have this big contrasting scene where Ryuk has just told Light there's no heaven or hell. There is nobody judging him. It's just death is the ultimate equalizer. And then we cut to Soichiro coming in, and he's mad at Elle about justice and that Light needs to uphold the principles of justice. And it's like Light has just had this conversation with the death god about how there is no heaven or hell. And Soichiro is over here like, Elle's going to go to hell for doing this. And that conflict is just bruised right there on the stage. And when his dad's like, you need to become a god unto yourself. What his dad is saying by that is that you need to be righteous and you need to be godly and you need to, uphold these good morals. And what Light says is like, yes, I should become a god unto myself, like a god of the new world. So their song was so good. I loved it. And Soichiro aligning Elle to Kira in his methods. Interesting twist. I like it. But that visual of Elle, of Light standing behind Elle, wrapped his arms wrapping around the chair, wrapping around him. So good. So good. But yeah, Elle and Light, they can sing together. They can harmonize. I'm here for it. I'm here for the harmonies. It was great. We just skipped over Ray Pinbar's arc. We did Halle Bell, which sounded like the Bleach character, and that's all I could think about in that entire scene was Halle Bell being Ray Pinbar's fiance. We just skipped Naomi, skipped Ray Pinbar, just had them all die. Totally fine. We got to see a touch of Light's crazy with Ray Pinbar. That is the one regret I have with this musical in terms of Light's character, is that he stays pretty even keel. Even when he's kind of getting manic towards the end, he still is pretty much on the same level. And the one thing I do wish is that we got to see more of him get crazier and crazier. We start to see a twist with Ray Pinbar's murder, but then it doesn't ever really go anywhere. It just kind of stays around the same area. So I wish we'd gotten more of that, but what can we do? But yeah, the task force is not the same as the anime, and Mogi dies in this version. I was like, why Mogi? Why does Mogi have to die? Oh my God, why'd y'all do that? They killed off Mogi, you bastards. I was not thinking that was going to happen. But yeah, no, they all have kids in this one, and they're not really individualized. They're all just the task force. We don't even get the names Matsuda or Aizawa thrown around at all, or Ide. It's really just Mogi. Mogi lost the draw of straws in the writer's room. They were like, we got to kill off one person in the task force. We can't kill off Matsuda. We can't kill off Aizawa. Nobody remembers Ide. So let's kill off Mogi. And they're like, okay. just baffling, right? Just baffling. But yeah, Kira, I wanted to bring this up is that we have a big choir chorus number where they talk about Kira becoming this force of justice. And I talked to the truck on Patreon in the comments about the final episode, and they were talking about how it's interesting that the followers of Kira, they're kind of like a cult. The followers of Kira all kind of, for the most part, fit a certain archetype from what we see. We see younger individuals, like the Gen Z at the time, that are following Kira. And the truck likened it, and I thought this was neat, that you have a generation that are very disillusioned, and they're just looking for something and someone to believe in. And Light comes in at Kira and kind of hands them what they want on a silver platter, and so they flock to him, right? But it's mainly like a younger audience. So I thought that was really cool to note. I thought that was interesting, and that they just want justice and something they can believe in. And then like the intermission part is literally Misa getting the death note and coming in. And man, Rim is just haunting. She's so good. And she tries to warn Misa throughout the whole thing. She's like, don't get near Light. He'll just bring you misfortune. And she's like, I'm going to do it anyway. And Rim's like, but I like that Rim tried to warn her about Light, being like, no, don't get near him. He's not good for you. That part was great. But then they have the duet with Light and Elle at the Academy ceremony. That was great too. And they talk about like Elle in this duet. It's so good. They talk about Light being a bipolar narcissist. Light is definitely a narcissist. I don't know if he's bipolar. I don't know if I would go that far. But yeah, Rim's song to Misa, so good. The duet between them, so good. They have multiple duets, and they were great. I was like, holy hell, Rim. Her actress was fantastic. And then, so basically, Misa decides to give Light the message in song and the Power of Love song. Elle's song about what to do. I love this. I loved an Elle song. I'm just going through my notes here. That Elle was talking about how he believes that there is no God, that man judges himself. So it's kind of interesting that he's like, well, you could see Elle saying, well, Kira can't be a god because there is none, but also man decides their own justice. And that's kind of what Light's doing. And Elle's, that part doesn't bother Elle. It's just the murder part. So that was so good. Rim keeps trying to discourage Misa from meeting Light, but she does it anyway. I love that Rim and Misa's duet, there's a reprise of it, and Ryuk comes in. Because in Rim's duet with Misa, Rim is like, love will lead you to despair. And Misa's like, love is going to give me hope. And then when we switch it, it's like Ryuk telling Rim that love is going to lead her to despair. And it's like, I loved that twist where Ryuk came in and took Misa's part in the duet. That was great. And then, yeah, Misa points out Mogi to prove she has the eyes. We just skip a bunch of episodes. Elle believes Shinigami exists now, so that's a thing. And then, yeah, Mogi dies. We bypass the whole camera in the house plot. We don't even bring out Watari in this musical. Again, I wish we had 2 parts to be able to elaborate more. But then Soichiro's song about his faith in Light. It was so sweet. Soichiro had a beautiful operatic voice. He had a very classically trained voice. You could tell he's been singing for a while. But his voice was gorgeous. And his song about Light and his faith in his son, his tender-hearted son, I was like, that was not in the anime. But God, that was so good too. And then, what have I got here? The mission, the tennis song. All I put down was, tennis song is suggestive. The tennis song is out of context. If you were just looking at the lyrics of that song and not watching the actual visuals, there are some questionable lyrics in that song that I'm like, That is our flagship song. If you ship Light and Elle, that is your flagship song, is that damn tennis song. Because I was like, this is suggesting some things. Lyrics, what we doing? But then we streamlined Misa getting captured. Streamlined it. We didn't even go through we skipped the whole Higuchi arc, the Boy Scout Light arc. We skipped all those arcs. Not important. But man, I really loved that Misa in this, she was so humanized in this. And I loved Misa's character in this musical because she wasn't played off as just a ditzy follower of Light that was doing things just because she was like yandere or girly, filled with charm and without any sense of her own. No, that wasn't the case. No, Misa in this version, she has reasons she's following Light. They make sense. And I liked how they portrayed her character. And she didn't just fall head over heels for him and was doing things for him without knowing the consequences. She knew. It was all fully on display why she was doing the things that she was doing. And it was very sympathetic. I was like, oh, look at this. Look at this series. How about that? And then, yeah, Light, what do I have down here? Elle's methods are questioned. Light is not turned in, so that's interesting. But yeah, Soichiro keeps questioning Elle, and then Rim ends up taking the death note away from her, saying that you do realize this is going to be a one-sided love. And I like that she phrases it that way to Misa, being like, you realize this is a one-sided love that you're involved in, right? You know that, right? And Misa's like, mm-hmm. It's so good. It's so good. But yeah, Rim and Misa, their relationship on display, their duet, it was beautiful. It was gorgeous. And that's from then on, while I did love the duet with Rim and Misa, at that point in the musical, I was like, we don't have a lot of time left. What are we doing? And we just bypass everything to go to the Daikoku Wharf with a pistol. And then Light manages to convince Rim that she has to kill Elle to save Misa. And he goes to the wharf and Elle ends up shooting him, which so curious that Elle shoots Light. That part it's probably the weakest writing in the whole musical because I'm like, Elle shooting Light is so weird to me unless Light told him to shoot him. But then in the Death Note, they said you couldn't kill others you couldn't make someone kill another person, only themselves. So it's a little bit of weak writing at the end there. And the one thing about this musical, because it doesn't have time, is that it can't really delve into how smart Light and Elle were against each other and the mind games that they play against one another. They just didn't have time. They could have made songs about it. They had the tennis song kind of, or at least the ceremony song kind of leads up to it as well. So they could have made that work lyrically, but they just don't have time. They've got to rush through the musical and get it done. So that is the one thing I regret, is that I wish they'd have been able to clear up the ending and make the ending a little more stronger, make Light seem a little bit more intellectual, but I can't complain about that. That was better than the Netflix version. That was much more enjoyable. The Netflix version was enjoyable because it was a train wreck and because I was just baffled. But I would watch that again. I will not watch the Netflix version again, ever. Nope, I will never watch the Netflix version again. And I was told by, I think it was Wim on Patreon, they were saying that in the Netflix version, I didn't even realize this, but there was footage of an actual train wreck. I think it was in Denmark, maybe. An actual train wreck. And the Netflix producers of the film used that footage without asking permission. And I guess a bunch of people got really ticked off about it. Rightfully so. So, what the heck, Netflix? What are you doing? What are you doing, Ryuk LLC? What's going on? So, I would definitely rewatch this musical. I will probably go back and look at the other version and see how it is different. But I'm not watching the Netflix version again. That was a one and done. One and done. But this musical, I'll go back and rewatch it. Hell yeah. Mm-hmm. Especially that tennis song. And the duets between Misa and Rim, those are amazing. That Power of Love song, all about it. And Ryuk's actor was great too. I just loved him. But yeah, I'm so excited now for the soundtrack. I've been told I need to listen to the English soundtrack because apparently it came first. It's the original, and apparently there's some really good music on it. So I'm all game for it. I found the playlist on YouTube. I've saved it. I haven't listened obviously to any of it, but I saved the playlist. There's like 19 songs. So it's going to be a long watch, but I'm going to get some coffee, sit on up with y'all, maybe have some popcorn, maybe an apple, Ryuk style, and we'll listen to that sucker and just get to listen to the lyrics and look at all. I'm so excited. But what I'm also excited is to hear your thoughts down below and what you all thought of this musical, because I was very impressed with it. I wish they'd been able to make it longer. I wish that it could have maybe been cleaned up in that final act, but aside from that, that was a pretty darn good musical. So I hope you all enjoyed this reaction discussion, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below. But in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with more Death Note. Bye.